We have 12 games on tonight. 12. So I got a lot of talking to do. And I'm going to try to make sure I get all my timestamps in and everything so that people don't necessarily have to watch the entire video. But there are some key matchups tonight. So let's get into it. First up, we've got the Colorado Avalanche on their 10-game winning streak going into Montreal. Now, this is an old feud with a different name because, of course, the Colorado Avalanche were once the Quebec Nordiques. The Avs are 10-0-0 in their last 10, as we all know. They have 57 points. They have the second wild card spot. They're 9-9-2 on the road. Montreal, 3-5-2 in their last 10, 44 points. They're 9 points out of the playoffs, and they're 11-9-5 at home. Carey Price has been confirmed. Odds are it'll probably be Bernier for Colorado. But it doesn't seem to matter who's playing for Colorado right now because they just win. And it's funny because, 10 games ago, they're sitting at 37 points, and we're talking about, how they're having a nice little run. They're probably not going to make the playoffs, but at least they've improved, and going into next season, they'll have something to build on. Well, right now, it would be a disappointment if they somehow fell out of the playoffs. Colorado's been playing the best hockey in the league, and it shows. And Montreal, 3-5-2 in their last 10. 3 of those losses, 2 in regulation, 1 in overtime against Boston. And it's been a rough patch for Montreal. I remember the Montreal Forum. Nobody wanted to play there. There was this tremendous fear of going into Montreal, and that doesn't exist now. You don't get that same feeling when Montreal's at home that they're this really intimidating, strong, fantastic team. And now Pacioretty's publicly said he's frustrated with the trade rumors that are going around. He shouldn't be paying any attention. It's pretty much an annual thing. And he doesn't have any control over it. I wonder if he's just frustrated at the rumors or if he just wants it over with. As in, fine, trade me, I want it over with. And for Colorado, when Duchesne hit that get out of town free card and went to Ottawa, it got better for Colorado. So maybe things would get better for Montreal if they traded out Pacioretty. And it sounds crazy, but maybe it's true. Maybe they just need a complete change in that locker room. Well, we'll find out. Carolina's in Pittsburgh. Carolina's 3-6-1 in their last 10. They got 50 points. Pittsburgh 6-4 in their last 10. Casey DeSmith has been confirmed as a starter for tonight, of course. They're 15-7-1 at home. The Penguins' record at home isn't as solid as it was earlier in the year, but it's still intimidating. And Carolina on the road, 11-11-4. They're 3 points out of the playoffs, are the Carolina Hurricanes. I have 0 points back for Pittsburgh due to the fact that they're tied for that last playoff spot, but the team that has that last playoff spot has a game in hand. So they get that spot. Pittsburgh is playing very well, and Carolina's playing very inconsistently and erratically. I would think this game Pittsburgh should win that one. That absolutely should be a win for Pittsburgh. That being said, Carolina is that wonky, unpredictable team. They were also quoted as saying, their coach Bill Peters was quoted as saying that they have faith in Scott Darling figuring it out. They're going to keep playing him. They still believe in him. I wonder how many fans of the team are in that same boat where they still believe in him and they still think he's going to be a good starter for them, because honestly, if Ward's in net, I give them a better chance than I do when Darling's in net. And it's kind of praise for Ward, and it's also kind of damning on Darling here. All right, next up, let us discuss Ottawa. They're 4-5-1 in their last 10. They've got 39 points. They're 6-11-4 on the road. It's a miserable road record, and they're 14 points back at the playoffs. St. Louis is third in the Central. They're 5-4-1 in their last 10. They got 59 points, and they're 15-10 at home. They have a good record at home. It's not great. There are other teams in the league with better home records, but The good news for them is Ottawa's coming in. They're coming in off of a loss last night against Minnesota, and this is an Ottawa team. It doesn't remotely resemble the one that went to the conference championship last year. This doesn't remotely resemble that team. St. Louis has started to get better again. The bonus for St. Louis is the fact that they did so well at the start of the year that they have that cushion. That cushion's kind of disappeared, though. They have to pick it up, and tonight's game is going to be a big telling. It'll be a telling moment for them whether they can win a game they definitely should at home against Ottawa or not. And for Ottawa, the pressure's off, I guess. Ottawa could start playing better because there's no pressure on them to perform. They're just sort of, they're out of it. They're really out of it right now. All right, so that being said, there isn't really a whole lot else to add. It should be a win for St. Louis. It's just should be. Philly. So look who the first wild card is. They're 8-2 in 10. They got 54 points. They're 10-8-4 on the road. The wildly impossible to predict Detroit Red Wings are 8 points out of the playoffs right now. They're 6-4 in their last 10. They got 45 points overall, whereas Philly's got 54. They're 10-9-6 at home, which is a pretty poor record when you remember 6 of those are overtime losses, so they've only won 10 out of 25 at home. I think they win this one. I think, honestly, that Detroit is underachieving, and I think at least finishing at 500 is where they should be by the end of the season. I believe they're still one game below 500 right now, so I'll go ahead and say, sure, they win this one tonight against Philly. But that being said, Philly has been playing some really solid hockey. And as much as we talk about Couturier for Selke, if Philly keeps up this run, and they've won 8 of their last 10, if Philly somehow keeps up this run and finishes, say, second or even first in the Metro, can Couturier get some comments as to whether or not he might be a Hart Trophy candidate? Because we've all talked about Giroux, but Giroux doesn't have the two-way game that Couturier has, and Couturier is scoring a bunch of goals. So at what point does Couturier jump from just being a Selke nominee to being something more? And that's something that's occurred to me when I've watched the last few games of Philly, is that yes, Giroux has been rediscovering his scoring touch. He's healthy, he's feeling good, but Couturier has been a revelation for Philly this year. And as long as that young defense holds up and their goaltending holds up, there's no reason Philly can't hold on to this spot and perhaps climb higher in the division. With 54 points, they're only 2 points back of second spot in the Metro. So as soon as tonight, we could see Philly second spot and closing in on first, which is Washington. So, Philly was a team that early in the season I talked about how they were very, very unlucky. Now they've had some fortune shine their way, and now they're up against a Detroit team that has been, as I said, wildly inconsistent. That big win last night over New Jersey, 3-0 shutout, that's fantastic for Mrazek and for Detroit. I would imagine Jimmy Howard starts tonight against Philly. Howard's been just as erratic as Mrazek. And, yeah, pick him. Pick him. All right, next up, New Jersey. Coming off of a shutout, they're going into Boston. Corey Schneider's been confirmed as the starter for New Jersey tonight. Boston, I believe it's Rask. New Jersey's 2-5-3 in their last 10. They've got 56 points. They're 11-7-5 on the road. They're still second in the Metro. Boston's 7-0-3 in their last 10. They got 62 points. They're 15-5-4 at home. Boston's quietly fashioned a very solid home record for themselves. And they're second in the Atlantic, of course. I honestly look at this game and I say, okay, Boston hasn't lost in regulation in 16 games. Odds are that's coming to an end. I wouldn't be surprised if it's New Jersey tonight. And it's because I keep waiting for this fight back from New Jersey. They've got 2 wins in their last 10, which means that it's been elusive. But I keep waiting for this big game. And I think a win in Boston tonight is possible for the New Jersey Devils. I don't know how likely it is. I don't want to measure likelihoods in this, but I do believe that while Boston's played well, I think Charlie McAvoy being out is gonna impact them. And I've been asked about this, and I'll just touch on it again here. The heart issue that's going on with McAvoy doesn't end his career. It won't shorten his career in all likelihood. And he had the operation. He's supposed to be out for 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, it's going to be up to guys like McQuaid and Carlo to pick up the slack and to pick up those minutes and cover until the kid's back. And, Torrey Krug becoming a huge offensive force would be kind of nice too. But, I'm kind of dreaming on that one. Krug's been solid. He's had a half-decent season. But I'm always kind of left wanting more by him over the last year and a half, I would say. I feel like there's another gear for Torrey Krug. And for Jersey, you've got a Boston team that's missing their best defenseman. I know everybody's going to say, well, what about Chara? No. McAvoy's been their best defenseman. So this is a good night to pounce. Take advantage of Boston's first game without Charlie McAvoy. We'll see whether or not they can. And next up, Tampa and Nashville. So Tampa's 5-4-1 in their last 10. They got 67 points. They're first in the Atlantic. Nashville 7-2-1 in their last 10. They got 62 points. They're second in the Central. Tampa on the road 15-7-2. Very good record on the road for Tampa, and coming off of a shutout last night against Chicago. Nashville 16-4-2 at home. Nashville is deadly at home, and Nashville's playing better hockey right now than Tampa. But all that goes out the window tonight. They are the two of the front runners, and when we talk about potential Stanley Cup final matchups that we're seeing, Tampa and Nashville is one that feels like it really could happen. I know I'm looking at Pittsburgh and where they're sitting, and they do have this tendency to end up back in the picture by the end of the year. But right now, Tampa and Nashville. And Nashville has been playing really, really well, and I would expect them to win this game. Tampa's on a back-to-back. I would expect to see a win for Nashville in this game. I'd be kind of surprised if Tampa won this. Tampa's now got 3 wins in their last 8. They've been struggling, and Nashville has been playing very, very well. I would kind of expect that to continue. Okay. So again, if I don't have a lot to say about a game, it's because either both teams are playing well or one team's playing really well, and there's not a whole lot to discuss. Florida. The Florida Panthers go into Dallas tonight. Florida 5-4-1 in their last 10 for 44 points. They're 8-13-3 on the road, however. So 8 wins in 24 road games. That's unacceptable. Dallas 7-2-1 in their last 10, 58 points. Dallas has the first wild card. Florida's 9 points out of the playoffs. Dallas is 16-6-1 at home. Dallas has been amazing at home, and Florida looks overmatched, but Florida has some good offensive weapons. They've got some decent players on the blue line, and if Reimer's in net, Reimer's capable of stealing one. And for Dallas, Bishop's been confirmed. Bishop's been playing well. That's why Dallas is the first wild card. Dallas is also breathing down the necks of the St. Louis Blues. They're 1 point behind the Blues. So if the Blues lose in regulation, and Dallas manages to get 2 points, Dallas slides into that third spot. Nobody expected it, and here they go. They're ready to grab that third spot. Dallas is definitely playing really good hockey, but Florida's been playing well too. Florida, much like Detroit, and they're both playing very similar hockey. Great one night, poor the next. Great one night, poor the next. And we'll see how they do tonight on the road in Dallas, where Dallas has been pretty good. Okay, next up, Buffalo and Edmonton. So what's the perfect solution for Edmonton's woes? Edmonton's 4-5-1 in their last 10. Buffalo's 3-6-1 in their last 10. Buffalo has 33 points. Edmonton has 45. Buffalo's 20 points out of the playoffs. Edmonton's 11 points out of the playoffs. Edmonton's 10-12-1 at home. I said, Western Canadian teams are very accommodating these days. Buffalo's 6-14-6 on the road. Buffalo's miserable on the road, but one of those 6 wins was last night against Calgary. So we go into tonight. I would imagine it's Leonard. It's probably Talbot. Edmonton's been flirting with getting better. Tonight's a chance to prove that they're getting better. They've got Buffalo on a back-to-back. Buffalo is probably the worst team in the league right now, and not last night's result notwithstanding. And this is one of those games Edmonton really has to win. They're 11 points out of the playoffs. By all accounts, they're done. Like, no matter what way you look at it, the Oilers are done right now. Because of the fact they have Connor McDavid, because of what they did last year, because they looked so good in the playoffs last year, people, including myself, are still not wanting to rule them out. Not willing to say, all right, well, that's it for this year. Better luck next year. The Oilers still, on some level, to me, look like a team that's just not got into the groove yet, and we're waiting for it, and I think it will eventually happen, much like it has in Philly. Philly went on that 10-game losing streak. Who remembers that? No? All right, that's fine. It's much the same with the Oilers. The Oilers are, they've been in a rut, and we're waiting for them to pull themselves out of it. And a win at home tonight against Buffalo doesn't fix it, but it does show they're going in the right direction. A loss to Buffalo tonight, that could end up leaving them 13 spots out of the playoffs. That's insanity. You don't come back. I mean, 11 is bad enough, but 13 is just, even in saying it, I hear myself saying 11 points and thinking there's only 35, 36 games left. They're done. But again, because of last year, we're all blinded by last year, which is dangerous. Next up, the Vegas Golden Knights are at home against Columbus. Columbus 4-5-1 in their last 10 with 55 points. They're third in the Metro. 10-10-3 on the road. The Vegas Golden Knights 6-2-2 in their last 10. They got 66 points. They're, of course, first in the Pacific, first in the West. And they're 18-2-2 at home. Vegas has looked a little more human over the last week. And yet, they go in and they lay a beating on Carolina. And now they're back home. So, as human as they may have looked, they had a very good road trip. And now they're at home again where they've only lost 4, only 2 of those in regulation out of 22 games. And Columbus comes in as a team that's been kind of mediocre. To be honest, they've been kind of mediocre. The Columbus Blue Jackets are in a spot where, as I mentioned before, Philly's 1 point back of Columbus, 2 points back of New Jersey. Columbus loses, Philly wins, Columbus finds themselves in a wild card spot. And in a wild card spot, you're going to play either Washington or Tampa in the first round. And you don't want Tampa in the first round. Columbus is already in a position where I would have a hard time seeing them win in a playoff series. If it was them in New Jersey, if somehow that was the matchup, that you have 2-3 New Jersey and Columbus, sure, I could see that. But almost anybody else in the East, with the way they've played lately, I just don't see them winning a playoff series. And for Vegas, I don't see them losing a playoff series in the first round. I feel bad for whoever meets them in the first round. And people say, well, they don't have a star player, so they're not going to win the playoffs. The fact they don't have a star player makes them harder to play in the playoffs. It's very easy to shut down a one-line team and just move on to the next round. But when you've got a team that can roll 4 lines and you've got numerous guys that can score, it is very hard to shut them down. I really think there are people still underestimating Vegas at their own peril. That 18-2-2 record is not a fluke. It's not because guys are coming in drunk. It's not because guys are gambling in between periods. It's because Vegas is very, very good. And they're taking advantage on some level of teams that may take them lightly coming in. And maybe Vegas has had a bit of a harder time the last couple of weeks because teams have stopped doing that, but I don't think so. I think teams have been taking them seriously since about week 3 on the schedule. I think that's when teams said, "Whoa, these guys are not your typical expansion team," and they really aren't. All right, next up, LA's in Vancouver. LA's 3-6-1 in their last 10, so is Vancouver. LA's got 55 points. Vancouver's got 42. LA's 1 point out of the playoffs. Vancouver's 14 points out of the playoffs. LA 13-8-2 in their last, or they're 13-8-2 on the road, and Vancouver's 7-12-3 at home. I watched LA come in and snuff out the Canucks late in the season last year. Of all of the games I've witnessed, it was the most lacking in excitement because Vancouver at no point during the night looked like they were going to score a goal. Vancouver is coming off of a game against Winnipeg where I never had an impression they were going to score a goal. This is kind of a bad matchup for Vancouver. And a good matchup for LA because they need them. The Kings have been on a slide, and they're trying their best to get out of it. And so here's Vancouver. As I said, Western Canadian teams are very accommodating. The Canucks 7-12-3 at home. That's not going to win you anything. It doesn't matter who's in net for each team. If it's Kemper against Nilsson, if it's Kemper against Markstrom, if it's Markstrom against Quick or Quick against Nilsson, the advantage goes to LA. Absolutely. And I know Nilsson had a good game against Winnipeg. I'm not trying to slag the guys. Just LA's goaltending has been kind of fantastic this year. And Vancouver's has been unpredictable at best, mediocre at worst. And it is a big part of the reason why they're where they're at, but their fact they can't score a goal also makes a difference. We'll see whether or not in their second game back together, whether or not that means that Besser and Horvat get some of that magic back. Because Besser's fallen right off the tracks in terms of his goal scoring. And it's not his fault. The whole team has just been in a muck. All you have to do is just cover Besser and make sure he doesn't score. You're going to shut out the Canucks or at the very least beat them. And that's kind of where we're at. All right, next up. The Rangers. The hapless Rangers. 7-11-2 on the road. 4-6-0 in their last 10 for 53 points. They got that second wild card spot. They're holding on by the skin of their teeth because Pittsburgh wins, Rangers lose, and that's all done. They're out of the playoffs. The Anaheim Ducks 6-3-1 in their last 10, 53 points. 12-9-3 at home. They're 3 points out of the playoffs. It is a key night for the Ducks. If they can win and watch LA lose, they'll pass LA. They get into that catbird seat. If LA somehow wins over Vancouver, possible. Anaheim loses against the Rangers, not very likely, but you never know. Then they're 5 points. And, these 4-point swings matter. And then when you factor in 3-point games, it just all blows up. The Ducks, though, have been playing better lately. Their last game wasn't one they're going to want to write home about, but they've been playing better. And for the Rangers, again, the effort's there. When I see Rangers fans saying crazy things about who they want to trade, and there's some core guys that are like, "Oh, move this guy, move that guy," really? Because I don't think moving some of those core guys is a good move when you're still technically in a playoff spot. I think huge upheaval in your lineup is a bad move, and I don't think the Rangers are going to make any major moves unless between now and the trade deadline, this fall continues and they end up so far out of the playoffs that they're going to sell. But I really don't see the Rangers selling right now. I really don't. I think the Rangers are still in a position where they feel like they can make a run if they get the right roster together, which means adding players at the deadline. I could totally see them adding players at the deadline. And last but not least, the thing to resistance, Winnipeg's in San Jose. Winnipeg 7-2-1 in their last 10, 63 points. They're 1 point ahead of Nashville. They're 11-10-6 on the road, which is a problem. They're in San Jose. San Jose 6-2-2 in their last 10, 58 points. They're second in the Pacific, whereas Winnipeg's first in the Central. San Jose's 14-6-2 at home. San Jose's very good at home. San Jose's a very solid team at home. Winnipeg's going to have a hard time. Absolutely, Winnipeg's going to have a hard time. They won their last game over Vancouver. That was after a shootout win against the Flames. Hard-fought wins. Hellebuck with a great shutout in his last game. San Jose is not the Flames or Vancouver offensively, though. San Jose, in my mind, has a better attack. And they're deceptively fast. You would look at, Thornton and some of the older players in the roster and think, well, they're probably slower. They're deceptively fast. And they're getting hot at the right time. As we're getting ready for the All-Star break, which is this coming weekend, they're definitely getting hot at the right time. And Winnipeg, again, on the road, 11-10-6, meaning they've won 11 out of 27 games on the road. That's probably not going to end up getting them first place in the Central. Relying on that great home record and an iffy road record, they probably end up second in the Central, whether it's behind Colorado, Nashville, St. Louis, whoever. I just don't see them finishing first in that really tough division with an iffy road record. Because eventually they'll their home record, I think, will... It's not going to balance out, but there's going to be some losses taken there. And I just think San Jose's playing really solid hockey right now. And, spoiler alert, they're number 11 right now in the power rankings, which I think is the highest San Jose's been all year. I think that's the highest they've been. And a win over Winnipeg tonight would go a long way to improving that as well. So let me know what you guys think in the comments section below, which game you're looking forward to. I will miss most of them as I work till 7 o'clock Pacific, which is 10 o'clock Eastern for those of you. And in Europe, I think it's Friday. I'm not sure. I should really have a clock up here of times for, but it's just there's not a whole lot of room. I could have all the European times. But anyways, that's for another time and another place. For now and for this, I'm done. And thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.